The rain poured like grief from the heavens that night when Ethan Carter made the decision that would change two lives forever. In the flickering light of a worn hospital corridor, he stood staring at the donor consent form, the ink trembling in his hand. He had nothing left to give this world except his kindness. And sometimes, that's all it takes to change a destiny. He wasn't a hero. Just a single dad, broken, struggling, and desperate to hold on to the tiny fragments of hope left for his daughter's future. Yet, that night, he decided to give away a part of himself to a stranger whose name he didn't even know. If you believe in kindness, in miracles, and in second chances that come when we least expect them, then take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps us bring more heart-touching true stories to life. Ethan's world had never been easy. Once a construction worker with dreams of starting his own business, everything changed the night his wife, Claire, passed away giving birth to their daughter, Lily. From that day, his life revolved around one thing, making sure his little girl never felt the emptiness he did. He worked day and night, picking up shifts wherever he could. His hands were calloused, his back ached, and sometimes his soul felt too heavy to carry, but he always smiled when Lily looked up at him with her big brown eyes and asked, "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" He'd always answer, "We already are, sweetheart." But behind that smile was exhaustion and pain. His daughter had been diagnosed with a heart condition, manageable but expensive. Between hospital visits, rising bills, and an economy that seemed to crush the working man's spirit, Ethan's hope began to fade. That's when he heard about a woman at the local hospital, a young woman in desperate need of a kidney. Her story appeared in a local news article, "Unidentified woman in critical condition awaiting kidney donor. Rare match needed." Ethan didn't know why that article made his heart ache. Maybe it was because he knew what it felt like to wait for a miracle. Maybe it was because he wanted Lily to see what compassion looked like, even when life wasn't fair. He went for the tests quietly, without telling anyone. He didn't expect to be a match. But he was. And so, with no fanfare and no glory, he signed his name on that paper. When the nurse asked him why, he simply said, "Because someone out there still has a reason to live and I can help them find it." The surgery went smoothly. He woke up sore but calm, surrounded by machines and the quiet hum of the hospital night. He didn't know who received his kidney. He didn't want to know. He just hoped it saved someone's life. But fate, as it often does, wasn't finished writing his story. Across the city, in a private wing of that same hospital, a woman opened her eyes after weeks in a coma. Her name was Victoria Hale, a name that held power across industries. She was the CEO of Hale Enterprises, a billion-dollar conglomerate that built half the city's skyline. To the world, she was cold, commanding, and untouchable. But behind that armor was a woman who had spent her entire life alone. Her wealth had bought her everything except love, warmth, or genuine human connection. She had no family, no friends, and her health had been fading quietly. When she collapsed during a board meeting, her life hung by a thread until a stranger gave her a second chance. Weeks passed before Ethan was strong enough to return to work. His recovery was slow, but he didn't complain. He just needed to get back to earning for Lily. Still, medical bills for his own surgery added up, and the strain on his finances worsened. Some nights, he went hungry so Lily could eat. Other nights, he lay awake wondering if he'd done the right thing. But every morning, when he saw Lily smile, he knew he had. Meanwhile, Victoria couldn't stop thinking about the man who had saved her. She asked the hospital staff for his name, but all they would tell her was that he wished to remain anonymous. That only made her curiosity grow. She had spent her life around people who wanted something from her: money, power, influence, but here was a man who gave her life and asked for nothing in return. It haunted her. One afternoon, while visiting the hospital to thank the staff, Victoria noticed a janitor cleaning near the pediatric wing. His movements were slow, deliberate, his face pale with fatigue. He looked familiar. When she asked one of the nurses about him, she learned his name: Ethan Carter. The nurse mentioned he'd been a donor recently and was working extra hours to pay off his daughter's medical expenses. Victoria froze. It couldn't be, but it was. The man mopping the floors was the same man who had saved her life that night. She couldn't sleep. For the first time in years, she cried, not out of pain, but out of gratitude. She decided she needed to meet him, but she wanted to do it without the walls of wealth and power between them. So she disguised herself, dressing simply, and returned to the hospital the next day pretending to be a volunteer. She found Ethan sitting in the cafeteria, sharing a small carton of milk with Lily, laughing softly at something she said. It was such a pure, heartwarming sight that it made Victoria's chest tighten. She had never seen love like that, not in boardrooms, not in mansions, not in her own life. She introduced herself as Tori, saying she was new to the volunteer team. Ethan smiled kindly, offered her a seat, and shared his sandwich without hesitation. They talked about simple things, life, loss, dreams, and love. He told her about Lily's condition, about Claire, about how he sometimes felt like life was testing him beyond reason. Victoria listened quietly, her heart breaking and healing all at once. Over the next few weeks, she kept visiting, sometimes bringing small gifts for Lily, sometimes just sitting with Ethan on the hospital bench, talking about the things money couldn't buy. He still had no idea who she really was. To him, she was just Tori, the kind, gentle woman who somehow made his days brighter. Then one morning, Ethan received a call. A company named Hale Foundation was offering full medical coverage for Lily and a stable job for Ethan at one of their new housing projects. Confused and overwhelmed, he accepted. He didn't realize the hand behind his miracle was the same woman whose life he had saved months past. Life began to bloom again for Ethan and Lily. Their tiny apartment was replaced by a cozy house near the lake. Lily's health improved, and Ethan's laughter returned. One sunny afternoon, during a company event, he was invited on stage to meet the CEO who had sponsored his new life. As he walked nervously toward the spotlight, his heart nearly stopped when Victoria Hale stepped forward, radiant, graceful, and smiling with tears in her eyes. She looked at him and whispered through the microphone, her voice trembling, "You gave me life, Ethan, and I just wanted to spend the rest of mine making yours better." The crowd stood in stunned silence, and then applause thundered through the air. Ethan's knees went weak as he realized the truth, that the woman he'd grown to care for, the one who'd quietly become part of his and Lily's lives, was the very person whose life he had saved. He didn't know what to say, so he simply walked up, looked into her tearful eyes, and said softly, "Guess we both got a second chance." From that day on, Victoria became more than just a benefactor, she became family. She was there for Lily's checkups, birthdays, and bedtime stories. For Ethan, she was the light that returned to his once dark world. And for Victoria, he was the reminder that love, real love, doesn't come from fortune, it comes from sacrifice, from kindness, and from the human heart. They never spoke about money or titles. Instead, they built something far more valuable, a home where laughter echoed, where second chances bloomed, and where two broken souls found healing in each other. Ethan often said that when he gave away his kidney, he thought he was losing something. But in truth, he had gained everything: hope, love, and a family he never expected.